Balaam got up in the morning, saddled his donkey, and went with the Moabite officials. But God was very angry when he went, and the angel of the Lord stood in the road to oppose him. Balaam was riding on his donkey and sent two servants were with him. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with a drawn sword in his hand, it turned off the road into a field. Balaam beat it to get it back on the road. Then the angel of the Lord stood in a narrow path through the vineyards with the walls on both sides. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, it pressed close to the wall, crushing Balaam's foot against it. So he beat the donkey again. Then the angel of the Lord moved ahead and stood in a narrow place where there was no room to turn, either to the right or to the left. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, it lay down under Balaam, and he was angry and beat it with his staff. Then the Lord opened the donkey's mouth, and it said to Balaam, "What have I done to make you beat me these 3 times?" Balaam answered the donkey, "You have made a fool of me. If only I had a sword in my hand, I would kill you right now." The donkey said to Balaam, Am I not your own donkey, which you have always ridden to this day? Have I been in the habit of doing this to you? No, he said. Then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with his sword drawn. So he bowed low and fell face down. Okay. The word of God for the people of God.
All right. Yeah. Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Those things always freak me out. All right, I got to find this. Here we go. It is just so organized this morning, aren't we? I tell you, that's not the one I want. It's interesting because when we were talking about Advent, when I say we, there's several pastors. There's myself and Andrew, Lauren, Brian, and Brandon. And we were talking about the Advent season, and we're talking about the stories that we would share and the messages we would do. I came up with the idea, Brandon really came up with the idea of the Unsung Heroes of Christmas. And I thought, well, let's talk about the hero that no one ever talks about. And that's the animals of the nativity scene. Now, when you get the nativity scene, how many of you actually put a scene out every year? We were at Don and Jan's Friday night, and there must have been 20 nativity scenes throughout the house. I don't know. You must have a house for your Christmas decorations and then your normal house. I mean, it's just amazing. But how many of you put those out every year, right? And most nativity scenes, the best nativity scenes, always have what? Yes, and animals and sheep, right? And ox, right? No? Yeah, come on. You're right. Yes. You look at me like, okay, where's he going with this? I don't have a clue where I'm going with it. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. So I'm like in this conference call, this Skype call, I'm like, let's do a thing on the animals, right? Thinking that's awesome. I don't have to preach that. I hope someone figures it out, right? And then I'm scheduled to come here and preach, and Andrew's like, by the way, you're doing the talk on the donkey. I'm like, oh my gosh, only God would do this to me. I try to get the guys to do it, and here I am having to do it. This is a different message for me because I'm more of a cause-type preacher, and I always have whatever. And then I intertwine story with it. So this morning is more of a Christmas reflection. So it's a little different, but that's okay. This is Mission Gathering. It's always different, right? It's always unique here. Very, very unique situation. Where do we get the nativity scene? There wasn't an artist drawing it. Mary was giving birth, and the animals were around her and what have you, and Joseph was panicking. The nativity scene comes from St. Francis of Assisi. And how we came up with this nativity scene, which I know there's a big one in the hallway, is that Francis, because not everyone had a Bible, like we have all of our Bibles today. How many actually brought a Bible today? Did you bring? Oh, you have yes. It's so weird. And you say, yeah, I have my Bible. It's right here. But because at that time people couldn't read, and the people who did read the Bible, it was the priest. And St. Francis wanted to help the children and their families understand the story of Christmas. But St. Francis, having an amazing heart for animals, would always include the animals of the Christmas stories. And that's where we get the nativity scene, first of all, is from St. Francis, because he shaped and made the figurines. He made the little baby Jesus, he made Mary and Joseph, and he made all of them, and he included the animals. And so that's where we get it from. And because he was such a saint of the animals, he believed so much in God's creation, he actually made the animals to be a part of the nativity scene. And so every year, when he would gather people together to tell the story, he would bring all of those figurines out and told the Christmas story. So that's where we get that the animals were there in the nativity scene. And so this morning I want to talk about the unsung heroes of Christmas, and that would be the animals. And we've talked about a lot of the other unsung heroes, but this morning it's the animals. Now, for me, it's interesting that this would fall on my plate, besides trying to talk the guys into doing this, and then I have to do it. But my early ministry preaching started with animals. I don't tell the story all the time. I think I've told it once here. But when I was about 9 years old, you know Garfield, Pastor Garfield. How many of you met Pastor Garfield? Well, when I was, that's a cat that walks around here. Pastor Garfield, I didn't have another pastor. Yes, it's 4 legs. It's a cat. But when I was 8 or 9 years old, I just felt I was called to preach, and I knew I was going to preach. But I didn't have a congregation at that time. Of course, why would anyone come and listen to a 9-year-old preach? But I did have a lot of animals. Okay, I lived out in the country with my other brothers and sisters. I'm the youngest of 8. And so I would just collect all of these cats, these stray cats, or neighbors' cats. I would just take them. I would just you're not taking care of this cat good enough. It weighed 50 pounds, but I felt like I could take care of this cat much better. And so I just would bring home all of these cats. And I'm not exaggerating. Preachers, we've been known to exaggerate. But I'm not exaggerating when I tell you this. There was a time that I had probably about 25 cats. I was like the epitome of cat lady, right? And which is so strange. But anyway, so being who I am today. But anyway, so I had all of these cats, and then my dad was a hunter. We have any hunters? Well, don't raise your hand because that's not a good thing. But anyway, my dad was a hunter, and so he had all of these hunting dogs, and he had about 15 hunting dogs, and they were professional hunting dogs, whatever that means. And so you know, I read. I was a huge admirer of a struggling small evangelist that you probably all heard of, maybe Dr. Reverend Billy Graham. You ever heard of that man? Maybe down the street, past something every now and then. And I remember reading that he would go out and preach to the trees. That he'd go out and preach, and he would also put little pebbles in his mouth. I don't know what that was about, but anyway, he'd put pebbles in his mouth to kind of help pronounce better, and so that would only rip up my mouth, so I never did that. But so I thought, well, I really don't want to go out and preach to the trees, and I think I will just start preaching to my cats. And so every night we'd feed the cats from all the meals of the day at my family's home. And, you know, they were just a bunch of food, and I would call the kitties every night. They were not living, 25 cats were not living in my house. They were all out throughout the land, and I would call them, okay? And I would call them every night and go, kitty, 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 kitty. I freaked him out. It's okay, brother. Don't go too far. He's running. Anyway, so I would call out these cats, and they would this congregation would. I would go to the highways and byways and bring them in, and they would come from all over, and I'd feed these cats, and then I would preach to these cats, sometimes for hours and hours and hours. Is he okay? You're right? Okay. I would preach for hours to these cats. I am a lover of animals. I'm the guy who sits and has fried chicken thinking of the chicken that I'm eating. Like, I can't believe I'm doing this, right? I'm that guy. I absolutely love animals. And that started early in my life because they were my first congregation. And I say that seriously. If one got sick, I took this serious. I would put oil on, it says, Book of James, if someone's sick, come together and you put a little oil on his head. I had one cat that was very, very sick, and my mom said, we need to put him down. And back in the South, well, Florida, at that time it was definitely the South, redneck land, if you had a sick animal, you didn't take it to the vet. You know what you had to do. You'd go out and shoot it or something. I'm sorry, Sunday mornings, no kids here, right? All right, they're all in there. I would just okay, this is not happening. You're not gonna kill my animal. And so I just, with the faith of a child, because I was a child, I prayed. I laid hands on this cat. His name was Popeye. And I remember this cat until this day, and I remember praying for him. He was so sick, very sick, and probably should have been put down at that time, but I prayed for him, and there was, I can't believe I'm telling you this story, but there was this huge, and this is God's honest truth, there's this huge tumor on his head, and I prayed for him, just as Jesus says, the faith of a child, right? And I just prayed for him, and my mother said, okay, all right, we'll wait one more day, just, putting up with myself and who I was at that time. And the next day, Popeye showed up completely healed. And so my early ministry started with not only preaching to cats and dogs, trying to make sure that they're not going to hell, right? But praying for cats and dogs. And I tell you that story because I absolutely believe that animals are a part of God's creation. And so I'm going to get a little heavier here. Of course, I wouldn't plan on telling you this. But when God, in the story, in the narrative of God's creation, and you read the book of Genesis, we see in the book of Genesis that we were not designed to eat them. According to the book of Genesis and the Torah, we were designed to eat things growing from the ground. That's how we were designed. That's what we were designed to eat. But as soon as man fell, according to the story of the beginning of the fallen, of us falling, what was the first blood shed? Do you know in the story? Do you know in creation, Adam and Eve? What was the first blood ever shed? It was an animal. Because of our shame. Adam went and grabbed an animal and said, I'm naked. I can't allow her to see me like this. And she's like, you can't see me like this, because her eyes were open to all of everything. And God said, don't eat this. And so all of a sudden they were just covered in shame, right? Humanity covered in shame. It's all, how you ever want to look at it, literally or metaphorically, we've been covered in shame. And the first blood that was shed was an innocent animal to cover our shame. And animals have been part of covering our shame and our greed and our needs since that. That was heavy, wasn't it? You weren't expecting that, were you? But that is a piece of this story, or of the story of who we are as people. It's reality. And so when I meet a Christian vegan, Christian vegetarian, I agree with them in a lot of ways because they are very convicted in that way. So I have this piece of me that is an animal lover. For example, some of you are still paying for my sins here, is that you have an 89-year-old cat wandering around, pissing and crapping everywhere, right? Because we just cannot give up on this cat. And I don't know where he's at now. He's at the bar where he should be. So if I looked like him and I was that old, I'd be at the bar too. So, and then you also have squirrels that live in your attic here, because when we first bought the building, the people say, oh, you got a family of squirrels up there, you got to get them, you got to kill them. I'm like, no, I went up and fed them. So, so you got squirrels up here all throughout the time. Jan's face, she's like, oh my God, there's squirrels up there. All right, so. But of course, there are those theologians and people who are like, but they're not, animals are not necessarily, and this was actually with St. Francis. There were theologians, the Pope was one of them, who struggled with the fact, why are you including the animals in the nativity scene when there was no mention of the animals in the nativity scene? In fact, people get frustrated when they see an ox or a donkey or sheep or what have you in the nativity scene. And so when someone challenges me on that, which no one's ever really challenged me on it, but when I read about people who have challenged people like St. Francis on this, I have to ask the question, have you ever read the Bible? Have you ever read the Christmas story? Because in Luke, where we hear one of the Christmas stories, it goes like this. Luke chapter 2, Mary's fiance Joseph, Joey, I always call him Joey, was marrying Joey from Nazareth in Galilee, had to participate in the census in the same way everyone else did, because he was a descendant of King David. His ancestral city was Bethlehem, right? David's birthplace. Mary, who was now late in her pregnancy, and that's what the messenger Gabriel had predicted, accompanied Joseph. So this is a census, and they had to go and travel to Bethlehem from Nazareth to be in this census that was taking place. While in Bethlehem, she went into labor. Okay, I know some of you have ladies here. You help ladies all the time who go into labor. You got to help. There's no like, can you hold out? Can you hold on? You have to. It's now, right? And you moms know that. And she went into labor and gave birth to her firstborn son, which we know to be Jesus, the Christ. She wrapped the baby in a blanket and laid him in a feeding trough, a manger. There's no scripture up there. She laid him in a trough, and trough is what? It's where animals eat. Also, another translation says manger, because there was no inn. Because in the inn there was no room for them. And so when someone says there's no animals, we don't know there was animals in the Christmas story, my response is, have you read the Bible? If there's a trough, right? If there is a trough, that there is a manger there's hay inside for the ox and the donkey and whatever, there are animals. The Christmas story is a stinky manger scene. That's the real Christmas story. Kind of like our lives. Hello? It's like our lives. That's the Christmas story. The frustration and the mess. I mean, it's funny because I'm looking at some of your faces. I saw some of your faces as walking in here. I'm walking in, I'm saying hello, and I see some of the moms, and it's like a week and some before Christmas, right? Like Christmas is here. And I see in your face, like, oh my God, Christmas is here, right? It's supposed to be the most joyous, most peaceful time. And some of us look like we are ready to, because they need something. They got to have something. And then you got family, and then you got issues that the church is, projects the church is working on. And you got all these things happening, and it's not the most joyful, amazing time of the year. It's very stressful at times. It's not the most peaceful. It can be very frustrating. It's a lot of pressure. It's just like the first Christmas story. The first Christmas story was messy and stressful and frustrating because it was a young girl at the age of 14 or 15 who had an angel show up in her bedroom and she had the poster of Scott Baio or something like that, right? I don't know who the celebrity was at that time. It's a poster of some, rock star or something in her room, right? And there an angel walks in and says, "You've been chosen by God to bring in God into this earth, into his creation. You've been chosen." And she goes, "Me? I'm a nobody. I'm just a little kid. I'm a peasant." Literally, she said these things. She says, "I'm a nobody. I can't do this. Why would you?" Because God has found favor with you in the madness and the craziness of the Roman Empire. God is going to bring in the Savior of the world through you, Mary. You will be the mother of God. And what was her response? "Okay, this kind of like sucks." I'm paraphrasing. "This kind of like sucks, but," as she's ripping down the poster behind her, "this is difficult, but if I found favor in the Lord's eyes, then so be it," right? And then she goes and tells her love of her life, Joey, hardworking carpenter, wasn't wealthy, had a small family business, and she goes and tells Joey, and they according to biblical history and the history that we know at this time, they probably were arranged to be married. And it sounds like this arrangement was a good arrangement. It's not like they were into each other. And she went to her arranged husband, who's Joseph, and she said, "This is what's up, man. I'm pregnant with child. I'm pregnant." And he's like, "But it didn't, nothing. I would never, it didn't, we did not. I know, but I'm pregnant. And it's from God." Okay, right? So you think about the Christmas story, you think about all these unique things that makes it so unique. So why a donkey? Right? Stay with me. Why a donkey? Why, we see the donkey. Can you get the photo of it? With the photo, why this scene that we look at? So it's all the glitter, Shekinah glory there. All right, so why do we see this constantly? Why do we see this small, stubborn animal and Joseph and Mary traveling from Nazareth to Bethlehem, which is about 80 miles, 75 to 80 miles, and we see her riding on this donkey, even though it's not in the scriptures? Why is it not a horse? Why is it? Because they were what I just described. They were peasants. They were like what we would see today as middle class, salt of the earth, hardworking people. They didn't have horses. If she was going to make this trip, she would be riding on a donkey. That's just knowledge, common sense, biblical knowledge, that if they're going to make a journey, he would be walking. He would have walked it and carried her because she's pregnant, and she would ride on a donkey. So it's just common sense that that's what it would be. And so in that story, we see that the donkey was there, this animal that's not a stallion, right? It's the donkey. Right? And then there's Mary, a young girl who's told this really weird story, and the family was like, "This is weird." And Joseph's like, "I have a choice to believe you or just put you away," because he considered hiding her because he loved her so much. It says he was a righteous man. And when you hear the word righteous in the Bible, that means he had his stuff together. And he was a righteous man. He could have just had her put away. All right? But he said, I'll stick with you in this story. And he had a dream. And God said, "This is real." It's like, "Okay, I really am going to stick with you." And so you got a carpenter, you have a young carpenter trying to figure life out. You have a peasant girl who is trying to figure life out. Young people that are no wealth, no Roman Empire, no powerful leadership, or nothing like that. and you have them riding on a donkey. And the reason why is because that is exactly the Christmas story. That is a story of the Gospels, that as we watch Jesus grow up with Mary, we watch Jesus grow up, we see that God takes the nobodies and makes them somebodies to impact everybody. Okay? Even in the beginning of God coming to be a part of us, God coming to redeem his creation back unto God, right? Comes in the peasant girl, struggling dude, and a donkey. That is the gospel. That's the gospel. So I do believe that God can speak to us through animals, that God can help us heal and be better people as we look in the life of animals and how animals treat humans and how animals and humans relate. In this morning's reading that Andrew read, we have another story of a donkey, right? An actual, we know the donkey was a part of this story. And this story is about a man who is greedy. He was greedy. And he was told by God, do not go and do this certain act that you're going to do because it will affect the children of Israel going into the promised land. So long story before that. I don't have time to get into all of that. But he thought to himself, well, I'll do kind of like God wants, but I'll also get the money from the other people who want to hurt the children of Israel. I'll get hooked up and I'll kind of like do what God wants. And so therefore he got up the next morning, as Andrew read, and got on the donkey and was riding to do this act, but manipulated his way. And all he could see was greed. If he did this, what he was asked to do, he'd get incredible sums of wealth. And so he was riding this animal, his donkey, and he was riding, and the donkey saw what? Do you remember the story that Andrew just read? Saw the angel of the Lord. And the donkey went, okay, he's got a sword. He's got a sword. And normally, I'm not a dumb animal, but normally swords only mean one thing. I'm going to die, right? And I'm not only going to die, but this human that I love, that I'm carrying, that I've had in my life for years, is going to die. So the donkey just stopped, and the man beat the donkey. And the donkey got back up, and the angel of the Lord appeared again in the way. And the donkey tried to get around the angel of the Lord without the human being killed, and it really scrubbed up, basically crushed his foot. And the man got off and beat the donkey again, and then pushed the donkey forward. And he was like, I'm going to get this money. I'm going to have everything for Christmas. I'm going to order from Wayfair. I'm going to order from Amazon. I'm going to have the best Christmas tree. I'm going to have all the presents. I'm going to make sure everyone's got the top name brands of everything. It's going to be perfect. Hey, Merry Christmas, shut up. It's going to be perfect, right? You understand? The craziness of Christmas, the craziness of how we push ourselves with greed, and we push ourselves with what we want more and more and more. And you think you get frustrated when your kids want more and more and more. That's because they're watching us as adults who want more and more and more. And so the donkey was being pushed in again. He was like, I can't. There's this angel, and I've been beaten so much. And then she just stops and just says, okay, just beat me to death, because I'm not going to let you die. I'm not going to let you be. This angel of the Lord does not want you to go do what you are going to go do, and I'm not going to be responsible. And he started beating the donkey again, and the donkey spoke. Okay. This is where it gets weird, doesn't it? Okay? This is where it gets weird. This is where we go at Bible stories, and we go, that's interesting, okay? You know, like the virgin birth. We get a little weirded out by that sometimes, right? We get weirded out by a lot of things in the Bible. So let's look at this. So let's look at it as, for some of my brothers and sisters who want to say literally, that happened literally. But let's look at how it happens today, how it would happen today. Let me show you an animal that's very important in my life. Her name is Scout. Let me show you Scout. That's not her. There we go. That's Scout. I've had Scout for about almost 13 years now. And she had a brother. Her brother got out and was ran over by a car. And he was like a demon-possessed cat. But Scout was always a sweet little girl. And I remember going into, they weren't brothers and sisters biologically or from the same mother. But so I met Scout when I went to Humane Society in San Diego 13 years ago. And I remember walking in, and Scout was a sick little girl. And I was like, okay. And they're like, we keep all the little sick kitties in this room. As soon as she told me that, I'm like, okay, I want to go to that room. I want to go where the sick cats are. I want to go save a sick cat. So I walked in there, and I walked in the room, and I remember this as if it was yesterday. All the kitties scrammed, like they scrammed, and they like went underneath the little, like they set it up to like look like a living room, and they all ran underneath the couch there. And Scout, I mean, she was just a little thing. She ran right up to me and went like that, and went, oh, you picked me. This is it. So I scooped her up, and I said, this is the one. So, cats are much easier to adopt than dogs, because when you adopt a dog, and sometimes with cats in Southern California, they have to come and check out your house and all that. But anyway, I didn't have to go through all that. So I took her home, and she was really, really sick. And I woke up the next morning, she was covered in, I don't want to gross you out, it was a mess. She was dying. So I rushed her to the vet, and we got her cleaned up, put tons of antibiotics in her, and she started to improve. And today she's got some sickness and illness going on that I'm trying to work on. But I'm telling you all this, and I'm showing you this cat because I've had a lot of cats in my life. But the last several years of my life, the Lord has asked me to do some really hard things, right? The Lord told me, however you want to say it, leave a very comfortable situation in San Diego, that you started a church there, and come to Charlotte and start a church. And I remember just being so frustrated, frustrated is not the right word, take that out, so stressed, so worried about, should I be doing this? I remember there's times I would just be praying in my house in San Diego, God, what am I to do? Help me, God. I know you're asking me to do this, but I can't do this. This is so stressful. And this cat would come and just not audibly talk, okay, but connect with my soul and help me process what I knew God was asking me to do. And it was tough. It was tough. And little did she know that she's going to get on a plane with me, and she hated every second of it. So we came to Charlotte, and Scout is a Southern Cal girl. She didn't like the lightning storms here. She didn't like the thunder. She was a mess all the time because of that. But she held her own, and she did well. And then when God was like, okay, it's time to now go and start other churches. Like, I don't want to leave Charlotte. I don't want to leave. I love Charlotte. I don't want to leave Charlotte, God. God, why are you doing this to me? I like it here. I love the thunderstorms. I love the people. I love the trees. I love these things. And I love this church. But I knew what God was doing. God was moving me. And again, this cat came along and helped me process this through love, just unconditional love, which animals give us. Now, this time, going home, we flew first class, because there's no way, I mean, she was a mess. The coach people were going to kill me. Then I go to first class late at night, and I thought, oh, I'm in first class with all these stuck-up people. Now they're really going to kill me with a crying cat. But she did okay. We did okay. I got her home. There was a lot more room to work with. And so these animals that God bring in our lives, is to speak to us. And so we don't get tripped up on the donkey talking, is what I'm trying to say. Don't get tripped up on that. Metaphorically see it also as God using an animal to challenge us, right? How many of you have doggies, right? A lot of people relate to dogs a lot better. You ever had a dog just kind of look at you and go, why? Why are you stressing out? The best thing is happening right now. I'm here with you. My tail is wagging. I wait all day for you. I'm the happiest creature alive right now because you're here, right? When we connect to animals like that, they help us, they remind us what is the most important thing, and that's each other, right? Is that okay? You're with me there? And so why a donkey? Why scout? Why a trough? Why a peasant girl? Well, it's simple, because that's the gospel. There's one thing that animals constantly remind us. They constantly remind us of the story of Christmas, God's unconditional love. The story of God is love. The story of Christmas is love. As we look at these two stories of donkeys this morning, one, after being beaten, still loved the animal enough not to allow it to be killed, not to allow the human to be killed. That's called sacrificial love. A donkey that carried Mary to Bethlehem, carrying all the weight of God's redemption on its very back. Sacrificial love. And if there was a trough in the manger in that place where Jesus was born, there was definitely a cow or an ox. And then the shepherds, the outcasts, oh my goodness, the outcast of society, the shepherds, and all their sheep are summoned by the angels. Go and worship the King. And all the shepherds move forward. And if a shepherd moves, the flock moves with them. And so now you have the shepherds, these outcasts, these people who have been rejected by society, and all they do is hang out with sheep. And that's what they do. That's where they raise their families out on the outcasts. Like some of my Star Wars friends, the sand people, that's the shepherds, okay? So they're kind of like the outcasts, right? They don't hang out with people. And so all of a sudden you have these humans, but you have a lot more animals at the nativity scene, the manger scene. It is the story of Christmas. It is the nobodies. It is the nobodies. It's becoming a somebody to impact the everbodies. And that's the story of Christmas. So why is that good news for you and I? Why is that good news this morning? This crazy preacher talking about animals. Because the message is that no matter how small you feel at times, you are extremely important to God. Whether your whole life has been spent being told you're not enough, that you're powerless, though you may feel powerless, you are not to God. The Christmas story is exactly for you. Though you have been abused, as we talked about this animal and many animals being abused. Humans abused because we abuse because we've been abused, right? And we see an abused animal speak the truth and grace and love, actually, in this story. Metaphorically, literally, however you want to take it. That's the Christmas story, the language of love for you and I. That you may feel powerless, you may feel abused, you may feel rejected. The Christmas story, when you look at the nativity scene, it's perfect because you and I can be there. You and I can be there. That's the Christmas story. Because like the donkey, the ox, the sheep, the chickens, God takes joy in his creation. God takes joy in you and in me, his creation. So that's why the donkey is the hero of this story, because the donkey reminds us that even things that are disregarded and overlooked, God takes joy and pride in. We're on this journey. We have one more week, and then we have Christmas Eve, and then we light the Christ candle. We're on a journey toward this manger scene. We're on a journey toward the nativity scene with the animals. And interesting enough, a lot of us feel like we can't really show up at this part of the Christmas story because we're not good enough. Because we have a lot of anger. We have a lot of hurt in our lives. At this church and churches across the world, we gather around a table called the communion table, and we celebrate, we remember why the Christmas story is so important, why the Christmas story is to be celebrated and remembered, why we give gifts to each other, why we hold those who are important to us close by. We sing these songs about this loving God is because God never gives up on you. If there's anything you remember amongst this crazy, interesting, different message, is God never gives up on you. That's the Christmas story. So much so, God, with his hands shaking, lifted up the bread with the night with his closest friends, and he goes, "This is my body, this is God's body, which will be broken for all." And he took the chalice, and he poured it. He said, "This is the love of God that will be spilt for all of humanity. Drink and eat in remembrance of God who does not give up on his creation." Would my communion servers please head up this morning? There you go. Thank you. Thank you. Perfect. Let's pray. Gracious, loving God, let me say that again. Gracious, loving God, this season is the season that we've been here many, many, many times before. For us, Lord, it has become a season of stress. It has become a season of anxiety. It has become a season of going into massive debt. But Lord, this morning in this sanctuary, in this church, under this steeple that's been here for 60-some years, we gather to thank you. To thank you for everything and everyone who was at this manger scene, where you were born. The confused, conflicted, struggling humans, the animals that were brought there, the nobodies, the struggling, the forgotten, the misunderstood, the rejected, the abused, the addicted, the hurting. Yes, Lord, I'm describing people within this sanctuary. Not only in the manger scene, but in this sanctuary, they were humans, struggling. And so this morning we come to these stations of grace to find you, to find in the middle of the madness of this season, the real reason, your love and your grace. We have struggled, God. We have sinned. We ask that you forgive us. We ask that you restore us. That you help us to find peace and some joy. This morning as you come forward, when you take the bread, talk to God. Do business with God. And you dip it into